properties of the transition metal. Here, if you say that, I said that this is the transition metal. So the transition metal, it is having the existence in periodic table. In the periodic table, 4th row elements, there we have certain elements where the 3D orbital, they are partially filled and we call them as a transition metal. So I will be discussing these things in details later on. And there I have subcategorized these magnetic properties in two sections. First one, if I say this is the first one, it is the macromagnet. Macromagnet is nothing but whatever we are using in our daily life. I am sure in your household or in your childhood, you might have played with some bar magnet. I want to show you one bar magnet like this. This is nothing but one bar magnet. This is a toy bike. Backside of this, there is a bar magnet. So these are nothing but the macromagnet. And in this talk, I will be discussing about the transition from macromagnet to the nanomagnet. So I will start with macromagnet, and then at the end, I will be discussing some of the materials which are in the form of nano size, and these materials, they still belongs to the transition metal. So the transition metal, they are here and they are also there. So if you remember from the ancient time, bar magnet, it was not new to our mankind. It is known since 4th to 6th century BC. And this bar magnet has been used by Chinese. Nowadays, we are worried about this COVID-19. This is a gift from China. Simultaneously, if you talk about this magnetism or the magnetic materials, they have also discovered for the first time. So Chinese, they discovered good things as well as the bad thing. So we have to select the best one for our practical application. Now, this bar magnet, it was available. And for navigation purpose, they used to use this bar magnet without knowing the properties of these materials. Like in the ancient time, they used as a lodestone. This lodestone, people used to use, the mariners, they used to use these materials for the navigation purpose. And at that time, then they didn't know about the name or the properties of these materials. They simply called lodestone. Lodestone means, in English word, it is saying leading stone. Means suppose you are traveling across the world. So this, if you are carrying this stone, then they will show some direction. Direction of what? They will show the direction of earth magnetic field. So we know that we are sitting in this room and we are continuously affected by the earth magnetic lines of force. So earth magnetic field, it was there, and now when they are traveling across the world, they use this lodestone for the navigation purpose. And the first working compass, if we talk about the working compass, so it was, means here from the lodestone, they want to use this lodestone for different shape of materials. The first things it was there that they thought about we will make some kind of working compass. In working compass, when they use this lodestone, then they started using for various travel purpose. Like we know that in the ancient time, Columbus, Fahin, Huan Sang, they traveled across the world, and they might have used this kind of lodestone in their working compass, and that was known in the period of 20 to 400 AD. So the thing is that this magnetism, it is not known to the, it is not new to the mankind. It was known from the earlier days also. Then it was the major challenge. The challenge was that suppose for our practical application or the device application, if I need a bar magnet of a definite size or shape, then there was the first thinking in the year of 1831. American physicist Joseph Henry, he for the first time produced the artificial magnet. I will say the artificial magnet, it is nothing but the electromagnet. That was the first time it has been created in the laboratory. And we know all these things, that how to measure the magnetic field, what kind of materials we will be using. Initially, Henry used as a solenoid coil, then this is the conducting wire. By that way, we can calculate external field induction inside materials. So Now, the thing is that in all type of materials, whether it is a naturally occurring magnet or it is the artificial magnet or the electromagnet, in all the cases, we have one common property, that is the magnetic dipole. In all magnets, they should have two poles. Like if I show in this diagram, so north pole and south pole, and magnetic field lines, it is always here inside the bar magnet, it will be there, this magnetic field. If I write B, it will orient from S to N. In the outside, these are the magnetic lines of force, these are the imaginary magnetic lines of force. As I said, earth magnetic field is there in our room itself. So these magnetic lines of force we can't see, but experimentally we can detect. So that's why it is called imaginary lines of forces. Outside the bar magnet, they are originating from North Pole and they are finishing at the South Pole. So these are the textbook physics definition for the bar magnet. Now, if we try to compare with the electrical dipoles, because electrical dipoles, it was known for the first time. Then people discovered these magnetic dipoles and different kind of phenomena. So they initially tried to compare. Compare what? They said that this magnetic dipole, it is nothing but they are similar to the electrical dipole. That's correct. North pole, we can say this is nothing but a positive charge, and south pole, it is nothing but a negative charge. So external electrical lines of force, they will exactly behave like this. But inside the materials, it is the opposite to your magnetic field. It will be like this. This is our electrical field due to the electrical dipoles. Another difference is, in the case of electrical dipole, I can separate out positive charge, I can separate out negative charge. So separation of positive or negative charge, it is nothing but the existence of monopole. Like we know, proton, neutron, electron, they are, means neutron, although it is a neutral, but for simplicity I am saying in atoms, these three elements are there, so I can separate out positive and negative charges. And in home itself, you can try this experiment. You take a comb, you dry your hair and start combing. You will see that in your comb there will be the positive charges and in here it will be the negative charges. So electrical dipole can be separated out and there is existence of monopole. But in contrast to this magnetic dipole, there is no existence of monopole, magnetic monopoles. If I break any bar magnet to small pieces, even in the small piece, I will have two poles. So North Pole, South Pole, they will exist in pair. So there is no, till today, if I say 2020, in the year of COVID-19, till today, there is no experimental means proof. Theoretically, earlier also people proposed that there may be the existence of magnetic monopoles, but experimentally, they could not prove it. So that was the challenge. Now, in the case of when I said that there will be the transition from macromagnet to nanomagnet, so this is the basic principle. This basic principle, it says that if I prepare one nanoparticle, magnetic nanoparticles, then this magnetic nanoparticle, there should be two polarity. One is North Pole, another one is the South Pole. So now my topic is that magnetic properties of transition metal. Transition metal, now if I talk about that periodic table, so in gross, we know these things. In our textbook physics, we know this definition. Means if you take a look at the periodic table and the pure element, so majority of the elements will be either paramagnet or diamagnet. If I write here, so for paramagnet, I'm writing PM. So majority is paramagnet and diamagnet. Now, in this case, so 1 minute, I will just remove this, try to remove this, yes. So majority of this paramagnetic and diamagnetic. So here, if I talk about the magnetism, it was in major quantity in these two regions of our periodic table. Only 4 elements, there is the exception. Out of 4, 1 is only antiferromagnet, that is chromium. It is shown in this color, antiferromagnetic chromium. And remaining 3, iron, cobalt, nickel. they have the special importance. They are ferromagnetic even at room temperature. So that is the purpose of our investigation. So in bar magnet, if we take any of these elements and prepare one device application, out of this, then if you reduce the size, in this size reduction, we expect that they should show the ferromagnetism at room temperature, and we'll cross check these things, whatever prediction we have. So in this periodic table, I said that these fourth row elements, they are the transition metal. So transition metal, it is starting from scandium, because the definition is there should be partially filled 3d orbital state. If it is completely filled in d orbital, this is a directional orbital like p orbital. So most of us know this thing. So if it is completely filled, like in the case of copper, it is moving out from the transition metal. So our transition metal, it is starting from here and it is ending here. In all the cases, if you take a look here, 3d orbital, it is having 8 electrons. So based on that, we can define the transition metal. Now, out of all transition metal, our interest is here, because ancient time lodestone, it was nothing but it was a one kind of ferrimagnetic materials. But I will not talk about ferrimagnetic in this discussion, because ferrimagnet are the magnetic properties of the materials where it is only observed in the compound. But these four, this can be seen in pure elemental metal in your periodic table. So the ferrimagnetism, although it was known in ancient time, I am excluding that discussion. So here we are interested on these three transition metal. Now, depending upon that electron orbital configuration in the outer orbital, they have the different magnetic moment. So depending upon the electron spin orientation, that magnetic spin, I will be talking these things. So if I write like this, so if you are having the pure free atoms, in that case, electronic configuration, it will be 3d6 4s2. But if we are having some kind of cations, in this case, depending upon the number of unpaired electrons. So magnetism is nothing but it will be decided by the unpaired electron on the outer orbital. For any materials, if the outer orbital is completely filled, then we will not get any kind of permanent magnetism. Like here, now we can classify the materials. Like in material science, we always like to classify the materials. We can classify the materials in terms of their electrical properties, optical properties, mechanical properties. Now, when you are talking about the magnetic properties, we will classify the materials. So in periodic table, all the elements could be classified in 4 categories. Majority are paramagnet and diamagnet at room temperature. I am talking about the room temperature. And very few, they are showing ferromagnetic, and one is showing antiferromagnetic behavior. So here also, Pierre Weiss, he proposed for the first time that there is a spin ordering for paramagnetic and ferromagnetic system. So spin ordering in the case of ferromagnetic, and in the case of paramagnetic, it is disordering. So what do we mean by this? So here it is that. So if we talk about that magnetism in terms of magnetic spin, what is magnetic spin? What is the origin of magnetic spin? I will be discussing in the next slide. So before going to that, based on this classification, as I said, in the periodic table, we have these 4 classification of these magnetic materials. Out of 4, 3 are permanent. I can say paramagnetic, diamagnetic. Here, I can classify this diamagnetic is not permanent, only these remaining 3, para, ferro, antiferro. So these are the permanent magnet, and diamagnetic, it is non-permanent. Why? Because it has the existence when I will switch on the magnetic field. Why this is so? Here, if you take a look at the magnetic spin, in the case of paramagnetism, without any applied magnetic field, the spins are randomly oriented. If we switch on the field, then only there will be some magnetic moment, and this magnetic moment, it is giving some positive value. So if I compare in terms of magnetic susceptibility, like we know the susceptibility definition, chi is equal to m by h. So here for paramagnet, it should be positive, because it is in the direction of magnetic field, and the order of magnitude is very small, 10 to the power minus 5, positive 10 to the power minus 5. This is positive. For diamagnet, it is a weak magnet, and this weak magnet in presence of means when I will switch on the magnetic field, there will be the magnetism, and this magnetism, it is in the reverse direction of our applied magnetic field. This, so they have the very weak value of the order of, again we can write same magnitude as paramagnet. So we can compare that. This is positive value, this is negative value. The chi, it should be negative in this case. Susceptibility, magnetic susceptibility. For ferromagnet, this is very high boil, this is positive and very high. It is of the order of 10 to the power maximum value, if I write 10 to the power 6. So if you compare the magnitude, and in the case of antiferromagnet, again this one, ideally this should be 0, but experimentally if you try to measure, we'll be getting some positive value, similar to paramagnet. So in most of the textbook, they don't mention this magnitude. Ideally it should be 0, but we don't get, we always say that they give positive magnetic susceptibility similar to the paramagnet. Now, if we compare the differences in magnitude between diamagnet, paramagnet, antiferromagnet and ferromagnet, we see that highest value it is obtained for the case of ferromagnet. And what is the change in magnitude from the lowest value to the highest value? It is of the order of 10 to the power 10. So by this way, we can say that which one, suppose in practical purpose, if we need some kind of permanent magnet, which one we will prefer? We will prefer the ferromagnet, because in absence of magnetic field, ferromagnetic materials, they have the higher value and they will give the saturation magnetic moment in absence of any magnetic field. And in absence of magnetic field, I am talking about, but they will influence by different kind of phenomena, magnetic domains and etc. I will be discussing that one also. So this is the best for our practical application. So when we talk about that nanomagnets, we try to focus on these ferromagnetic materials which are there at room temperature. So this transition metal only we have considered iron, cobalt and nickel. Now, if you talk about that molecular theory, how do you explain this kind of magnetic spin orientation? It is explained by classical physics as well as the quantum mechanics. So in quantum mechanics, Heisenberg, he proposed these things, and they proposed this phenomena for two nearest neighbor spin and calculated for all these things, ferromagnet, antiferromagnet, paramagnet, diamagnet. So depending upon the minimum energy for any solid materials, that spin configuration, it will be stable. Like why? In the case of ferromagnet, why they will be in one particular direction, in this direction. And for antiferromagnet, there is antiparallel, nearest neighbor spin, they are antiparallel. So the question is that, okay, there is a magnetic spin. This magnetic spin, why they will orient in different orientation for different kind of materials, that will be determined by this exchange energy. This J is nothing but exchange integral. So depending upon the materials, we have different value. For the ferromagnet, J is positive. For antiferromagnet, J is negative, and for paramagnet, it is positive but lower quantity depending upon the susceptibility of the material. So if we try to find out the origin of magnetism, another thing is we are talking about the magnetism, and magnetism, it is inseparable from the quantum mechanics. We can't explain magnetism without the help of quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics has been developed in the beginning of 20th century. If I write the year like 1905 to 1920 and so on. There are a group of scientists, Planck, Heisenberg, Einstein, Fermi, Dirac, so on. They contribute here in this quantum mechanics. So when we're talking about this magnetism, so we have to take help from the quantum mechanics, because it has been observed that the magnetic properties of the materials cannot be explained by the simple classical physics. So we need the help of quantum mechanics. Why? Because the existence of electron spin can only be explained by the quantum mechanics. Electron has been discovered in the year of 1897. So just before the development of quantum mechanics by J.J. Thomson. So we know these things. So here the origin of magnetic moments of solid materials or any bar magnet, they are basically following the magnetic moment of the electron spin. So this is the fundamental physics of that nanomagnets. So we can consider that in one atom, suppose there is a contribution of one electron. This one electron, I can say this is nothing but my north pole, this is nothing but my south pole. Similarly here. Now, if we consider this atomic structure in terms of quantum mechanics, we know that there are certain orbital, cells, subcells, all these things. There are four principal quantum number, N, L, Ml, Ms. So this spin quantum number, Ms, this is the orbital magnetic momentum quantum number, Ml. So the thing is that when you are talking about the atomic structure has the existence in quantum mechanics. So here, if you consider any particular solid materials, they composed of atoms and molecules. Each atoms, they are having the electrons, protons. So these electrons and protons, they are continuously moving. So based on our electrodynamics physics text knowledge, we can say that any moving charge particle, they create certain kind of magnetic field. Based on Biot-Savart's law, we know these things. So when any electrons, it is moving across the nucleus, it is rotating. Suppose I say this is nucleus, here we have the existence of neutron and proton, and this is electron. So this is moving, so it will create some kind of magnetic field. So we can say due to the orbital quantum number ml, we are getting one magnetic moment, and magnetic moment may be in this direction. That direction could be determined by right hand rule. If you can look my hand, if these four fingers, they show the motion of the charge particle, then my thumb finger, it will show the direction of magnetic moment. It is in this direction as it is showing in the slide. So if it is like that, it will be down. So spin up, spin down, depending upon the rotation of your charge particle. I'm saying charge particle, maybe electrons or proton. So here, due to this revolution, I have one magnetic moment. For electron is revolving. Now for proton, what it is doing, proton is rotating about its own axis similar to the electron, if we consider this thing. So proton, it will contribute in nuclear magnetic moment, and electron, when it is revolving about its own axis, here it is revolving in clockwise or anti-clockwise direction. There also you can say that it will also contribute in magnetic moment. So based on that, for electrons, I am getting two parameters, 1 and 2. And for proton, I am getting nuclear magnetic moment. Nuclear magnetic moment is much weaker than the electron's magnetic moment. Minus 10 to the power minus 3 means nuclear magnetic moment 1000 times smaller than the electron spin magnetic moment. So we can ignore the contribution from the proton, although it is a charged particle. So we have to remember this. So the first and two contribution of the magnetic moment, they contribute in paramagnetism as well as other magnetic phenomena, if we say ferromagnetic and diamagnetic. So depending upon the spin orientation. And the means, sorry, I'm sorry here. This diamagnetic is not here. Diamagnetic, I will be coming here. Diamagnetic, it will be here. Means I want to write here antiferromagnetic. So these two contributing, mostly I'm saying that paramagnetic moment, because at room temperature, majority of the elements in the periodic table, I'm not talking about the compound, only the pure elements, they exhibit paramagnetic and diamagnetic behavior. So if I ignore these terms, so I will be saying that paramagnetic contribution is coming from these two factors from the electron. And the third one is that in presence of magnetic field, if I switch on one magnetic field here in this atom, so if I put this atom in presence of magnetic field H, so in this case what it will happen, these outer orbital electrons, they will gain energy and they will jump to the higher orbital. If they are jumping to the higher orbital, then there is a change in orbital. Suppose I say this is nothing but this is the electronic configuration of the first member of the periodic table, hydrogen. Here I have neutron and proton, number is 1 and electron is 1. So it is like this. Now if I switch on the magnetic field, this 1s orbital electrons, they will jump to the outer orbital. So if there is this kind of jump, my drawing is very poor, excuse me for this. So if electron is jumping from this orbital to this orbital, so there will be one kind of magnetic moment. And the origin of diamagnetism is there. Like when we showed here, diamagnetism, it is opposing in this reverse direction of the magnetic field. That means it is orienting in the reverse direction. And diamagnetic contribution is there for any type of magnetic system. If I now talk about paramagnet, ferromagnet, antiferromagnet, in all the cases we have the presence of diamagnet, because here what we are having, switch on magnetic field, electrons may jump from the one orbital to the another orbital. If it is jumping, then it will contribute in the diamagnetism. This is based on our Lenz law. If I write the name L-E-N-Z. So based on that, every metal which are having the unpaired electrons, they will contribute in diamagnetism. Then in this case, what will happen to the diamagnetism? It says that suppose we have the presence of other magnetism, para, ferro, antiferro. In that case, the magnitude of this magnetism is much, much larger than the diamagnet. This is very weak and they are very strong. So if they are absent, then only we can see the presence of diamagnetic materials or this spin orientation. Now, in presence of field, how they will behave? They will behave like if I switch on the magnetic field, as we said, like in the case of diamagnet, they are in the opposite direction, means they will now oppose the external applied magnetic field. If this is the external field, this is blue color is our diamagnetic materials, they will expel the magnetic lines of force from the interior of the materials. Permeability of these materials, it should be always less than 1. Susceptibility, it was negative. So now we have this kind of field magnetic lines of field for all different type of materials. In the case of paramagnet and antiferromagnet, they will behave similarly. They have the positive value of permeability as well as the magnetic susceptibility kind. In the case of ferromagnet, they will be highly attracted because of the higher value of magnetic moment. So this permeability also much, much higher. So that's why we targeted ferromagnetic materials to design our nanomagnet. So now how these materials, they will behave with the variation of temperature, field, means external parameters. If you say the external parameters. So first easiest external parameters is the thermal energy, because thermal energy is nothing but if you heat the system, it is very easy to heat. We don't need any sophisticated experimental tools for heating an element. So in this case, how this magnetism changing with the variation of temperature. So as I said that Pierre Weiss, he proposed the paramagnetism and the ferromagnetism in the year of, if I recap once again, in the year of 1907. So Pierre Weiss and Pierre, first name is same. We know the Curie-Weiss law in honor of their name. They are the French scientists. So they proposed the paramagnetism and ferromagnetism. So they said that, so we can calculate the magnetic susceptibility of any type of system at sufficiently higher temperature, means in this region, by using Curie law. So in the paramagnetic state, they propose this Curie law. Here we know this thing. This is Curie constant, this is temperature, magnetic susceptibility. And the importance is here for the case of ferromagnetic materials and the antiferromagnetic materials. Ferromagnetic materials has also been proposed by them, and they said that below a certain temperature, this one proposed by Curie. That's why in honor of his name, it is called the Curie temperature, TC. So below a certain temperature, there will be the perfect ordering of the spin. This is the disordered spin due to the thermal agitation. This is the perfect ordering of the spin. So due to the exchange interaction, the exchange energy, it should be minimum. If energy is minimum based on the thermodynamics, this is the basic principle in chemistry. So if the exchange energy is minimum, so that structure, it will be very stable. So we can calculate from the Heisenberg model. So it was reported that exchange integral is positive, as we discussed earlier. So here they will show the complete saturation below the Curie temperature. So similar to that, there is the variation in the antiferromagnetic behavior. Antiferromagnetic behavior below the nil temperature. This is nil temperature Tn. This has been proposed by Louis Néel in the year of 1930. Similarly, Néel has also proposed ferrimagnetism, which we are not discussing in this topic. Ferrimagnetism, ferrium, if I write, in the year of 1948. So, why I am writing this name and the years? Because this is important to mention. 1907 means earlier people thought that all the elements in the periodic table, they belong to the ferromagnetic materials. Because lodestone, it was known, when they studied, they found that the magnetic moment is higher. Then in 1907, they observed that, okay, magnetic moment, it is higher. So later on, Néel investigated the other materials in the periodic table as well as in the compounds. And they found that ferrimagnetism, it is only there in the compound of lodestone. Lodestone is nothing but magnetite Fe3O4. This is a compound, so we are not discussing this one. The thing is that there is some correlation. Weiss and Néel, they work together. Also, Weiss and Curie, they work together. Now, there is a means bonding between Weiss and Néel, because Weiss was the PhD supervisor of Louis Néel. So they work in same laboratory. And due to the properties of magnetism, Néel obtained the Nobel Prize in 1970. So for the magnetism of materials, this was the first Nobel has been awarded to any person. Now, based on this, what we can propose that first discovery, it was on paramagnet, ferromagnet, then later on antiferromagnet and ferrimagnet. Lodestone, it was known from that 4th to 6th century, but the exact behavior properties, theoretical validation, it was not there. Now, the Curie-Weiss law, it says that first proposed by Curie, it said that at higher temperature we can calculate the magnetic susceptibility for any type of materials, and above the transition temperature Tc and Tn, they will behave as a paramagnetic materials. All the region, this one, this one, this one, they are exactly same. So depending upon the temperature, we may have the ordering this one and this one. If we sufficiently increase the temperature above the transition temperature, they will behave as a paramagnet. Now, in the periodic table, if we consider most of the elements, they will pass through the paramagnetic state at sufficiently higher temperature. That is true for any kind of magnets. Suppose we were talking about here, we have this 4 type. Out of 4 type, if I increase that, suppose I say I am increasing up to 2000 degrees Celsius. In 2000 degrees Celsius, even the transition metal, because for iron, cobalt and nickel, cobalt is having the highest ferromagnetic Tc, it is around 1200 degrees Celsius. So if I heat this system at 1500 degrees Celsius or 2000 degrees Celsius, the spin orientation, it will be random in all cases. So they will behave as a paramagnet. So that's what proposed by them. Now, for the diamagnetic system, what it will happen if we change the temperature? In these diamagnetic systems also, spin ordering, they will disturb. If there is a randomness in the spin ordering, then they will behave as a paramagnet. But if you study the magnetic susceptibility with the variation of temperature below the transition temperature, so in that case, we will say that this magnetic susceptibility, it should be negative and it is independent of temperature. Below the, suppose I say at room temperature, some of the elements, they are diamagnetic. Now, if I study this magnetic susceptibility from 0 Kelvin to 300 Kelvin, they will be independent of temperature. But for other cases, they are changing. They are varying, like we have seen here. They are varying like this for antiferromagnet, ferromagnet this, and paramagnet is this. Now, what should be the field weight? Okay, one more point here. Like this was the temperature variation for the diamagnet. If we study the field variation, if we plot magnetization or the magnetic susceptibility, so we'll see that with increasing field, if field is increasing in this direction, the magnetization, it is increasing in the negative direction. So that means it is following the same thing, that magnetic susceptibility, it is negative for the diamagnetic system. So now we can one-to-one correspond with the paramagnetic system. So here we can say that there is a direct proportionality between magnetism and the applied magnetic field. Now, if you consider the paramagnetic system, it is exactly opposite. If we consider the slope, here it is a positive slope and it is going in the positive direction. And one similarity is that M is directly proportional to H. So only difference is value, magnitude is positive and negative. Positive for, so we can say that substance which is having the positive susceptibility, they are called paramagnet. Substance which are having the negative susceptibility, they are called diamagnet. So now this variation, it is observed completely different, means non-linear behavior for MH or BH whatsoever in the case of ferromagnet or ferrimagnet. I will be discussing on the ferromagnet. So here, depending upon the type of materials, what is the nature of the materials, single crystalline, polycrystalline. So depending upon the value of the grain boundaries, we may have the higher value of loop. We can say the loop of this hysteresis curve. If this loop is large, then in the one cycle of this, suppose I say increase the magnetization, then decreasing the magnetization. So I'll say that increasing, we know the definition. This is the remnant magnetization, this is the corrosive field. I'm not going into distill all these things. The thing is that if I increase and decrease the magnetic field by this magnetization and demagnetization, we see that they don't follow the similar curve and there is a hysteresis in between magnetization and demagnetization. So this width of this BH loop or MH loop, that determine the energy loss. Energy loss, if more, so there will be the more heating energy on my system. So if there is heating energy continuously, it is there. So we may lose the ferromagnetic properties or we may lose the mechanical properties of the system for our practical application. So depending on the nature, we may get this kind of loop, red color or maybe the blue color. If we are getting red color, then it is called the hard ferromagnet. If this color, blue color, small value of corrosive field, we will be getting the soft ferromagnet. So we will be using this type of ferromagnetic materials for our different type of device application. Now, why there is this kind of differences? Like some of the ferromagnet materials, they will behave like, suppose I give you one example. In the case of ferromagnetic materials, so if we don't switch on the magnetic field, in most of the specimen, they don't show the magnetic saturation. One example is that I will give you one small demonstration. Like if I take this bar magnet, in this bar magnet, we know it is completely saturated, spin orientation is there. It can attract another iron particle. Suppose I say this is bar magnet, this is nail, it is made up of iron. If I say that this is a pure iron, even if pure iron, it is having the percentage of doping of carbon. So like if I put it here, it will attract this nail. But if I take this nail, same nail, and I use another magnetic materials, this magnetic materials, it is also made up of iron. I can say this is nothing but a steel gem clip. So this steel gem clip, if I bring towards this nail, they will not attract, although they are made up of iron. And we know that iron and their alloys, they are ferromagnetic at room temperature. They will attracted by the bar magnet, because bar magnet is a permanent magnet. Why they are not behaving like this? That is because of the magnetic domains it is showing here. When any iron particles, they are not permanently magnetized in their domain orientation, they will behave as a paramagnet, means they will not attracted by each other. Why this is so? Because inside of any ferromagnetic materials, there is the existence of domains, or the means I can say there are domain walls, domain boundary, all these things there. So here we can say that in these materials, I am having 3 magnetic domains. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3. So the existence of magnetic domains it explains the magnetic behavior of any ferromagnetic materials at room temperature, why they do not attract. But if I use this same nail and if I put in the bar magnet and then I try to attract by this one, they will attract. Why this is happening? This is because of the orientation of the domain one. So now we'll be discussing this one. So in this case, what it is happening, when we are having the pure iron nail or iron bar and it is not magnetized, I didn't apply any external field. In this case, this domain wall or magnetic domains, they will try to orient in such a way that their energy is minimum. So inside of this domain, the magnetic energy is almost zero. So in this case, they will behave as a paramagnet. So they, although in one domain, the spin they have saturated, but if I consider many number of domains inside of this type of materials, they are not saturated. So they are oriented in different direction. Now, when we switch on the magnetic field, so in this case, what it is happening, if I switch on the magnetic field for the ferromagnetic materials, they will show the non-linear behavior at higher field. But at lower field, if we take a look on this graph, at lower field, they are showing the linear behavior, small region here. So they will directly follow B proportional to H. But at higher field, as we said that they are non-linear, so they will follow this behavior. So what it is happening in the domain structure? Domain structure, it is saying that for low field, in the direction, suppose I apply, this is my domain, randomly orient domain at H is equal to 0, like it is like a paramagnet. Now if we increase the field, gradually the spins, they will orient in the direction of magnetic field. So if we keep on increasing the external field, the magnetic spin, they will perfectly orient in the direction of applied magnetic field. So now we can say that depending upon the external field, there will be a saturation. Saturation means it will be completely flat. So depending upon the materials, we may have different kind of shape and symmetry of my magnetic hysteresis. And based on the domain structure, we can select our materials for our practical application. Now for fine particles or the single domain, now if we consider, someone may think that this is nothing but a polycrystalline sample, but we will say that no, this is not. Because these magnetic domains, they have the existence in polycrystal as well as in the single crystalline sample. Suppose I say that I have a grain, polycrystalline grain of micron size, maybe 60 micron. In one mic, suppose I say this is my polycrystalline grain, this circle region. So in this polycrystalline region, the grain size is 16 micron. 60, right? I'm writing 6060. So inside one grain, there may be more than one magnetic domains. Here maybe 3. So in this case, they will cancel each other. Because of that, we will never get the complete saturation. If I apply magnetic field, then only there will be the saturation. But if I can make one magnet which is having the size of this, suppose I say there is a grain or there is a crystal. In that crystals, I have a single domain. In this single domain, all the spin, they are in this direction. So that is nothing but nanomagnet, NM I am writing. So this is the origin of our discussion. Now, when we are talking about the ferromagnetic materials, it will be interesting to say that where we are using these magnetic materials in our, means if I say the example, magnets in our daily life, we are using everywhere. You can check, you are using this headphone, like I will give you another example of the headphone. This kind of headphone you are using for your mobiles, you try to bring them closer, you will say they will repel each other. So there also you are using some kind of paramagnet. So these are the simple demonstration you can try at your home. Now, from here, why you are changing towards the single domain particles or the nano domain? So the thing is that in the magnetic recording devices, in desktop, mobile, everywhere, when we are using the thin film type of magnetic materials, in our debit and credit card, there also you have seen the chips or the magnetic, earlier used to black magnetic stripe, it was there. So there we are using single domain ferromagnetic materials. What is the advantage of the single domain ferromagnetic materials? There we can write the information, like here we are using, this is the ferromagnetic materials. Now here we are having the recording head. Suppose I want to put the information, like suppose I write 0, in other case I will write 1. Like suppose I say 1 is nothing but North Pole, 0 is nothing but South Pole. So by that way I can store the information in the magnetic materials. And if it is a permanent magnet, there is an advantage of the permanent magnet compared to the electromagnet or the artificial magnet. What is that advantage? Like permanent magnet, once it is magnetized, now it will not be disturbed for longer days, maybe 100 years. It will be like that. If you don't change the temperature, if you don't put some pressure, external pressure or external field, if you do not disturb permanent magnet, it will be as it is for the longer duration. But in the case of electromagnet, I have to apply the external power. So I need a power source, electrical power. But for permanent magnet, once it is magnetized, it will be lifelong. So this is the advantage. Now, one point I was telling at the beginning that, okay, if we break any macro magnet and try to get it in the nano size, if I say that this is macro size bar magnet, if I break it and apply external field, then I will be getting this size of nanomagnet. In this nanomagnet, again I will repeat, there is an existence of two poles, North Pole and South Pole. So there is no existence of monopoles in the case of magnet. So this is the main aim of our next topics. Here, Nitram sir, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
How many minutes are remaining?
Sir, up to 12.
Okay, so I have another 20 minutes.
No problem.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay.
No problem.
So that was the origin of our macro magnet or the bar magnet. From there, how we are transforming towards the nanomagnet. So if we give you this example, so here what we are saying that, so in this case, our single domain material, suppose I prepare one transition metal alloy or the transition metal mixed with another type of transition metal or in a non-transition metal. So we tried different way. We used these first three transition metal, iron, cobalt and nickel. Then we dope these things, not in one compound. In other compound we doped by some non-transition metal element. We said that copper, it is going off from that transition metal series. So copper was diamagnetic, these three, they were the ferromagnetic. So we investigated this series. And the details of this investigation, these are available in these journals. You could find out these things in the literature. And if you need these articles, you could write to me. I will send you the copy. So we started this investigation in 2015. So there we started with that alloy of iron and cobalt. So what are the importance of these nanomagnets? These are the following. Nanomagnets is very important for any kind of field. Means here if we talk about the application, this application, so whatever bar magnet we are using, like I had given the example of this bar magnet. So this size of the bar magnet could be replaced by smaller size. And what is the advantage of nanomagnet? If we reduce the size of this macro magnet, in that case, magnetic saturation, it will increase. Permeability, it will increase. So we are not going to lose the magnetic properties, but we are reducing the size. The size of the magnet we can reduce, but the strength, it will be same or more than the bulk phase. So that is the advantage. So now we can control the finite size and all these things. And why in the nanomagnet magnetic moments it will be higher? Because when we are reducing the size, in reducing size, the bandwidth, it will be narrowing down. So when it is narrowing down in the nanoscale, so there will not be any kind of overlap between the orbitals. So due to that, the magnetic moments of these materials, it will enhance. So this is reported, well known in the literature. This literature, if you find out, you will get all these things. Now, where we are using means we could use. I'm not sure that till now they are using nanomagnets in any kind of these materials. That magnetic fluids, biomedicine, MRI, data storage. Wherever we are using the bar magnet, we can use, means we can replace those bar magnet by nanomagnets by replacing their usability or the practical application. Now, what are the major challenges of magnetic nanoparticles? When we try to prepare the alloy of these nanoparticles, it has been observed that, see, nanoparticles, we are reducing the size. Reducing the size means we are increasing the surface energy. Now, they are very susceptible to change in the environment. Means when I will bring these materials in the ambient condition, ordinary pressure and temperature, after synthesis, this is post synthesis condition, so they will try to oxidize. Now if I am using iron and cobalt in pure metallic form, they will be the alloy and they have the ferromagnetic properties at room temperature, this bulk they show. But if I am trying to prepare nanoparticle out of this alloy iron and cobalt, then they will be oxidized once I will bring out the furnace or whatever synthesis processing we are following. So because of that, we will be getting iron oxide or cobalt oxide. Iron oxide FeO, cobalt oxide C, means if I write the chemical formula, because iron oxides, they are very magnetic as I said earlier, but here I am talking about FeO, suppose I say CO, cobalt oxide, they are antiferromagnetic. So the thing is that we have to be very sure that whatever alloy nanoparticles we are preparing, they are not oxidized. How to stabilize this nanoparticle at ambient condition, means at room temperature or atmospheric pressure? Then we have to use this carbon encapsulation. We have to coat by something. This coating, we observe that it is best when I am using the carbon, because carbon, it is having the higher physical and chemical stability in different kind of atmosphere. In ambient condition also, they are not going to change. Suppose I want to use these magnetic nanoparticles for biomedical application. So biomedical application means now we will be injecting these magnetic nanoparticles in our human body. So there it will come across to some kind of acid or base medium. So in that condition, if you don't coat it, then they will be easily dissolved. Okay, and that may create some kind of problem in our body. But if we coat with carbon, this carbon cutting, it will be intact in presence of this kind of medium. And this carbon, it does not have any toxic effect in our human body, because you know our human body is also made up of carbon, some compounds of carbon, hydrogen, all these things. So this is the advantage of carbon encapsulation. Now in this carbon encapsulation, what is the disadvantage? Because it is nothing that if I use some materials, it will only give the advantages. Simultaneously, there it will come across some kind of disadvantages also. So this is the disadvantage. Like if we increase the thickness of the carbon layer, then ferromagnetic property, it will be disturbed. So if it is disturbing the ferromagnetic properties, then this is not desirable for the data storage. So we have to make sure that the thickness is such that it will not disturb this ferromagnetic alignment of the magnetic spin in our single domain. Now, how did you proceed for this one? So we started with the simplest synthesis process. Because why I am saying the simplest synthesis process? Because earlier, till 2013, if we say this a year, till 2013, the synthesis of these alloy nanoparticles, it was done by various techniques. Like this one latest means we reported this one based on one region. Why? Because in chemical vapor deposition technique, they use the minimum temperature, whatever it is reported in the literature. That was the minimum temperature, 800 degrees Celsius. So our technique, the Sol-Gel synthesis, wet chemical technique, we say that this is the best one. Because why? Because we able to synthesize these nanomagnets in the temperature range of 300 degrees Celsius to 600 degrees Celsius. 600 for extreme cases. I will tell you that for what we have this 600. Because most of the things we obtain at 300 to 400 degrees Celsius. So that is the advantage. That's why we have written low temperature synthesis. So now after getting this, we are saying that we predicted that we will prepare this carbon coated alloy nanoparticles of iron and cobalt. Then after this, we will be investigating the magnetic properties. That is our final aim. So there we have studied the magnetic properties with the variation of temperature and field. So in this case, the first thing of here, for the case of iron and cobalt, we followed the simplest sol gel technique. In the simplest sol gel technique, we use the nitrate salt, and the procedure is given here. Up to this one, after getting powder, it was okay. Here, when you are getting powder, we did the synthesis in ordinary furnace. There was nothing new. So there, when we study the X-ray diffraction, because this is the first characterization tool, it will tell us whether we are getting the pure phase or there are some impurities. So in this case, when we try to characterize these materials, we obtained that we didn't get pure phase at 300 degrees Celsius. So we tried several ways. So here we tried at 300 for 8 hours, there were impurities. But when we increase the temperature as well as the duration, 350 degrees Celsius, 12 hours, finally we achieved our target. We obtained a single phase of iron cobalt alloy nanoparticles. And here we are saying that we obtained in this extreme condition. We have synthesized in seal tube. There we are flown this mixture of inert gas, argon and 10% of hydrogen. So here, this is the important point. The final sintering should be done in inert atmosphere. In this case, so whatever citrate it is there, they will reduce and they will make the carbon 14. And what is the proof of this? The detailed synthesis and other things are available in this article. You can find out. Now, where is the proof that we have coated our alloy nanoparticles? Otherwise, post synthesis, when we will try to study the magnetic properties, they may be oxidized if it is not coated. So then, to prove that phenomena, that they are really carbon coated, so we have started high resolution transmission electron microscopy. So this is the distribution of the particle, and then this is the electron diffraction. Here they confirm the crystal structure. It is a cubic crystal structure, whatever it has obtained by the X-ray diffraction. Cubic lattice parameter is this. So by electron diffraction also, we have seen that they are nicely crystalline. They are the crystalline, not amorphous. So single domain crystalline particles. So now I say that iron, cobalt, it is a single domain particles which is coated with the carbon. If you enlarge this image, it is here, this white arrow, it is showing the interface between, this is the core structure of iron cobalt alloy, and this layer, this is nothing but the carbon or graphite layer. And inset figure, it is showing that the layer distance is 0.34 nanometer. This is comparable to the graphite layer separation. So this is the proof that alloy nanoparticles, they are coated with the carbon layer. Now we have prepared several composition like iron cobalt, iron nickel, nickel cobalt, all these things. Then we are interested to study if we dope by some, I'll say that this is a non-magnetic, because copper is diamagnetic. Magnetism, it is in the presence of magnetic field. If we don't apply any magnetic field, it is not a magnet. So I will say it is a non-magnet. So we have doped one non-magnet in a ferromagnet. So in that way, again we succeed. We have reported these things recently. So we obtained the nanomagnet for different kind of transition metal. And there we proved that they are coated with the carbon. Here also this graphite layer species, we are getting 0.2 nanometers. So that means the graphite layer thickness, it is varying from 0.2 to 0.34. In the case of nickel and copper, it is 0.2. In the case of iron and cobalt, it was 0.34. It is in the range of the expected value of the graphite layers. And what are the particle size of these nanomagnets? Nanomagnets, we obtained this particle size, it is varying from 20 nanometers to 60 nanometers. So that is the definition of your single domain magnetic particles. If you are having any fine particles which is having the dimension of the order of 10 to 100 nanometers, then we can say this is nothing but a single domain particle. So here we prove that in this nanomagnets, we are having the particle dimension less than 100 nanometers and they are coated with carbon. Now, if we study the magnetic properties, in these magnetic properties, this one is the temperature dependent, this is the field dependent. As we studied earlier in the first part of our discussion, there we have shown that for the perfect ferromagnet, what should be the behavior? Field dependent. So, in this case, we can say that they are perfect ferromagnet at even at room temperature. If we say 300 Kelvin is room temperature, although I am sitting at Jabalpur, the temperature is 40 degrees Celsius. It is more than room temperature. Room temperature, we usually say it is 27 degrees Celsius. Okay. Even we have studied at 400 degrees Celsius, there is a perfect saturation. So we can say that they are perfectly ferromagnet. They are ferromagnet at room temperature and they are nanoparticles. And what is the corrosive field? Corrosive field we obtained at 5K, it is around 900. At room temperature or 400 Kelvin, it is around 700 Oersted. 1 Oersted is equal to 1 Gauss in CGS unit. And in SI unit, it is Tesla. So all these things you can convert. This is the field dependent behavior, which signifies the ferromagnetic behavior. That is also proved by our temperature dependent magnetization. In our squid, we had the limitation. We can go up to 400 Kelvin. So there we have seen that it is giving perfectly straight line for the field cool magnetization. For the zero field cool, it is increasing from the lower value to the higher value with increasing temperature. That is because at low temperature, in absence of any magnetic field, in zero field cool condition, we will switch off the field. We cool the system, switch off the field. Then here we apply the field of 100 Oersted and measure the magnetization. So at low temperature, all the magnetic spin, they will be freezed. Once you increase the temperature, there will be the ordering of the system. So at 400 Kelvin, they were trying to order. But when we measure the field cool, it signifies the ferromagnetic behavior of these magnetic nanoparticles. So this is the definition of the single domain. So if the domain wall thickness, as we said earlier for the bar magnet, domain wall thickness, if it is greater than the size of your particle, then we can say this is a single domain particle. This is another definition. Like single domain, I said that size should be in between 10 to 100. And in terms of magnetic domain also, we can say this is a single domain particle. This is another one for the iron and nickel. Why I am saying that and showing this iron and nickel, because for all alloy nanoparticles, we have observed that iron and nickel, it is having the highest magnetic moment. Highest magnetic moment around 2.9 μV. Now, if we compare with the bulk system, for iron nickel bulk bar magnet, they have this magnetic moment around 2.3 μV. So in nanoparticle, we have increased, although 0.4, but we have increased. We didn't decrease. So we improved the magnetic properties, magnetic saturation, permeability. So everything this in terms of magnetic properties, which are essential for the magnetic recording, we have improved and we have reduced the particle size. So we can store more data in any of these nanomagnets. And corrosive field, it is varying with the particle size, and theoretically it has been proposed in several literature that corrosive field is directly proportional to the size to the power 6. So then we can say it is a single domain particle. So we achieve this, and we from this corrosive field value we can say that these are nothing but the soft ferromagnetic materials. As I defined earlier, hard ferromagnet, soft ferromagnet. So depending upon our purpose, we can design the materials. Like for the iron and cobalt, corrosive field was around 700 at room temperature. In this case, it is around 80 to 90 Oersted. So it is very less. So if you take a look, this is although showing 100 Oersted at 100 Kelvin. If we go to higher temperature, it is further lower. It is 80 to 90 Oersted. So it is reducing. So they are iron and nickel, they are really soft ferromagnet, which we are using in our transformer core. So for any practical application where magnetic field is switching very frequently, so energy loss, it should be minimum. The width of the curve, that should be minimum. So in that purpose, we will use the soft ferromagnetic materials. But if we want to use any bar magnet, so there we will be using the hard ferromagnet. So this is the basic principle, and this is the temperature dependence behavior. We have seen that at 100 and 1000 they are saturating at low temperature. So this is the magnetic saturation. Now, if we compare these things for the copper doping. So here, these are the similar type, iron, nickel, nickel, cobalt, all these things, they are showing the soft ferromagnetic behavior. This is field variation, this is the temperature variation. And the interesting point is here for the case of copper doping. It is a non-magnetic copper. So in absence of field. So in this case, you observe that here the magnetization value, it is around 50, but for all other cases, for nickel cobalt 65, in this case this is 120. So the copper doping, it has the negative effect, and that is expected. So nickel was the magnetic cations. Now we are replacing some magnetic cations by non-magnetic cations. So if we are replacing this, so they should decrease the magnetic moment, and at certain value of copper, there should be the zero magnetization for this kind of materials. That has been proved by this investigation. Theoretically, we had predicted this value. For what value we should have the zero magnetic susceptibility for nickel and copper system, and we obtained that. This plotting, it is showing for the nickel and copper. Is showing that for x is equal to 0.4, they should give the negative, zero magnetic susceptibility, because copper is diamagnet. So by that way, we have succeeded to prepare nanomagnet for different kind of transition metal by doping with different other elements. So if only non-transition metal is copper, we can start with other system also, which is under progress. Our PhD students, they are working on that. So what is the future direction? By using Sol-Gel method, we can easily prepare nanomagnets. And what is the size range? Size range is 20 to 60. It has been confirmed by X-ray diffraction, high resolution transmission electron microscopy, all these things. And magnetic study, it proved that is a nanoferromagnet at room temperature. So now all the bar magnet, that could be replaced by these nanomagnets. Because of the size, we can store more data. So these are the advantages. So at the end, I'd like to thank my collaborator, Motin and Oleg, and also our PhD students who have contributed in this work. Most of the synthesis part has been carried out by them. Finally, I would like to thank all of you for carefully listening to this discussion. And if you have any suggestion or if you need any articles, you could write to me. My information are available in this website. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Any participant, if you want any question?
Sir, I have taken the question on the WhatsApp.
Okay, okay.
So I will raise the question on behalf of participants.
Okay, okay, okay.
Sir.
Yes.
So the first question is from Srinivas Kulkarni. Is there any effect on susceptibility value when we go from macro to nano?
Oh yes, like I was discussing here.
That is actually shown in the figure.
Yes, yes,
the
yes.
graph also, that it is increased.
Yes, like I was showing in terms of magnetic moment also here, I said that when I am going from that bulk to nano, the magnetic moment has increased. So if we study at 100K for the bulk system as well as for the nano system, it is higher.
And the next question is from Nisar Ahmed. Are there any theoretical method by transforming macro magnets to nanomagnets, or is purely experimental research?
No, in the literature it is there. If you read my articles, there we have, so in this graph you can see that. This was the theoretical prediction. So theoretical prediction, it is already there. And experimentally we are proving that. So there is a one-to-one correspondence.
Next question is from Senawaz. How do you fix oxidation of nanoparticles?
Okay, so like oxidation, as I said that here we are restricting this oxidation. I said that. See, the challenge of nanoparticles, we have to, like here, what are the major challenges? If I go back here, I need to coat these nanoparticles by carbon. I don't want oxidation. If it is oxidized, iron to iron oxide, cobalt to cobalt oxide, then they will be the antiferromagnetic. I had written also during the discussion. So I don't want any oxidation of these metal alloys. So carbon encapsulation, it is ensuring that property. So they are not oxidized. So here, I'm saying that pure metals and alloys. When I am saying that iron and cobalt, they are in the form of alloy. Otherwise, depending upon the oxidation state, ferric ion, ferrous ion, we can calculate the magnetic moment. But we are not doing, we are restricting oxidation of these elements.
And another question is from Achyut Tiwari, who happens to our Holkar Science College students. And his question is this true? Earth magnetic field is weakening?
Earth magnetic fields means I can't answer this question, because I will tell you the magnitude, like whatever I know. Earth magnetic field, whatever we are measuring in our instrument, it is around 0.5 Gauss or 50 microtesla. Now, if you consider this bar magnet, whatever I showed here, roughly this bar magnet, it has the strength of the order of 100 Gauss. So Earth magnetic field is very small compared to this bar magnet. But I can't answer this question that whether this Earth magnetic field, it is decreasing day by day or not, because I never studied this thing.
Yeah, there is only two more questions we will take. One is, can GMR material can be used as nanomaterial? This is a question raised by Dr. C.P. Bardhani.
Okay, in the GMR materials, if we read that first article by Albert Ford, who received Nobel Prize, that iron, chromium, all these things, layer, they use the layer of this thin film in the order of nanometer. So they use these things. So this is not new. So based on their investigation, they received Nobel Prize for this GMR system, CMR system, if we say. This is known in the literature.
Yeah, there is a last question. It is from Miss Diksha. And the question is theoretically, how can we explain ferromagnetism on the basis of magnetic domain theory?
Okay, this one has been proposed, like I was writing, that in 1907, just remember this year, 1907, Pierre Weiss, he proposed this magnetic spin of the ferromagnetic materials in terms of magnetic domains. By molecular field theory they used, and later on it has been supported by the Heisenberg model. So theoretical explanation of the ferromagnetic materials, it is well known.
Okay, sir, there is a large number of questions, but I will collect all those questions and send you with email.
Yes, anyone can ask me question in my email ID. They are welcome. And if they need the slides or the articles, they could write to me.
Okay.
So I will invite all the people who have listened this lecture. They could write to me if they need any kind of research article or these slides.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So over to Dikshit, sir.
Thank you very much, Kundu sir.
Thank you, sir,
for your valuable time to spare with us. Thank you very much. And I think all the participants will be benefited with such great topic. And you have explained it very clearly in very good manner. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
On behalf of Department of Physics, I also welcome and thanks to my energetic principal, Dr. Suresh T. Silawat, who is additional director of Indore division also. I also thanks Dr. G.D. Gupta, who is head of physics, and my all participants and all members of the departments, particularly Dr. Netram Kaurav, who did this lecture series very good manner. Actually, we all, the Department of Physics, are depend totally on Dr. Netram. He is very good researcher. So we all should clap for him. Netram,
thank you, sir.
Well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. One participant, Mr. Dilip, is raising hand. इनको अनम्यूट कर दीजिए, कुछ अगर ये कहना चाहते हैं. राठौर,
क्या नाम है सर?
दिलीप. दिलीप NAVG लिखा है, मैं पूरा देखता हूँ इनका क्या लिखा है। कुछ एक बहुत देर से वो रेज कर रहे हैं।
अनम्यूट कर दिया।
कर दिया, हाँ बोले सर। दिलीप सर बोले। दिलीप सर आपको कुछ कहना है, पूछना है कुछ? नहीं, बात अनम्यूट तो कर दिया पर वो तो नहीं बोल पा रहे हैं। चलिए।
सर
हाँ,
एक मिनट, there is a notice to all the participants.
या
Please do not leave the WhatsApp group because we will give you all the information regarding the e-certificates on the WhatsApp. So please wait for next week. Everybody will get a e-certificate in coming week.
and the information for downloading the e-certificate that will be given on you on WhatsApp group. That's why you don't leave it. Thank you once again, Dr. Kundu sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you
Thank
to
you,
all
sir.
participants.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Leave कर दे सर आप?
कर दीजिए.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.